What if the biggest leadership risk in your business isn't the lack of talent, but the way you're trying to develop it? Most small business owners know that leadership matters, but developing leaders inside a small, fast-moving organization is a completely different challenge than doing it in a large corporate environment. Today, I'm talking with Rich Ashton, author of Growing Your Own, about why importing leaders often fails, why tenure doesn't equal readiness, and how intentional leadership development inside a small business can become one of your greatest long-term advantages. If you've ever wondered how to build leaders without losing your culture or your best people, this conversation is for you. Welcome back to the Modern Leadership Solutions podcast. I'm really excited about today's podcast because I'm talking with Rich Ashton, who is the author of a book called Growing Your Own, Common Sense Advice for Developing Leaders Within a Small Business. It's a great book, and there's so much practical insight into it that I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, hello, Rich. It's good to have you on the podcast.
It's great to be here. I too am looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Before we dig into the content, I was thinking maybe you could give us just a little bit of your background and what got you to this point.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that because I was very, very fortunate to begin my career with a large company, a large real estate development company out of Dallas by the name of Trammell Crow Company. And Trammell Crow is the name of the individual. It was a phenomenal opportunity for me to fill in the gap. I cut my education short. I dropped out of college after 2 years, and I was working around people who not only could work harder than I could or was used to, but they were a lot smarter. Virtually everybody in the company had an MBA, many of them Ivy League. So I got a firsthand look at how really smart people operate. And so I spent 10 years with Trammell Crow, 5 as a partner. And then I decided in 1983 that my passion was not real estate, and I really wanted to be in the small business world. So I sold my interest back to my partners at that point, and I had no idea what it was I was going to do. I began doing some investing, and I did a little bit more real estate on my own. But I also bought companies and turned them around and operated them and sold them. And that has been the remaining 45 years of my career. I retired 30 days ago, although I'm still in a chairman role in 2 HVAC companies. And now I'm talking about the book and just having a ball.
We know how important effective leadership is, and yet the efforts to develop leadership are, well, let's just say they're not where we think they should be. And one of the key things that really I find interesting is you talk about the differences between the larger businesses, the larger corporate environments, and these smaller entrepreneurial things. What are some of the differences that you see between running the large businesses and the small ones?
Well, you've hit on a real fundamental challenge because large businesses have the luxury of doing serious training in leadership as well as other things. And a person in a larger company tends to do 1, 2, or 3 things every day, and they do them well. In a small business, you do 8, 10, 15 things in a day, and you're not going to be good at all of them. The founder starts out doing all of them himself. He brings on a couple of people to help. But one day he looks at his business and says, if I'm ever going to grow this thing, I've got to have some leadership help. And his choice, or her choice, is to bring in a trained leader. Let's say you need an operations manager. Operations people are generally trained in larger environments. And if you bring in an operations person from a large environment into a unique small business, they're going to be struck by the chaos, number one, the lack of structure and the lack of rules. And it's very frustrating for that person to come into that kind of hair on fire environment of a small business. On the other hand, the employees who have been with you from the start kind of wonder why it was when a promotion was in order, why they weren't considered. But if you promote someone into a leadership role for which they're not prepared, you likely are going to have a failure on your hands and ultimately maybe lose a good employee. So I faced that numerous times in my small business ownership career. And I finally decided that it made more sense to me to build the leadership team from within rather than try to import leaders for the reasons I mentioned. And so that's where the book came about. That's where the training program came about. And the success in this case has been I was able to retire and leave the company in the hands of the people that I trained. So that's it. Not only has it been fun, it's been really rewarding.
I think a lot of business owners would agree and recognize that this need for effective leadership and trying to develop them is so important, and this desire to also build this from inside, but they're not always successful. In fact, I would guess that they're more often than not, they are not successful in doing that. So why do you think you've been so successful in developing this inside leadership talent?
Well, I couldn't have done it back when we were really struggling and really fighting every day. About 8 years ago, I guess I was able to bring in a general manager to take a lot of the daily responsibilities off my shoulders. Because you're right, in small business, you don't have time. Leadership training is a pretty low priority when you consider the other things, including survival of the business. But once I was able to offload a lot of my daily responsibilities, I had time to take a 30,000-foot look at the business and say, we're weak here and we're weak here, and this is what I need to do. And then as I was getting older and closer to the end of my career, I knew I had to do something. It didn't appeal to me to sell the business to someone who wouldn't operate it the way we had operated it. And so I decided that I would try this. It took, I guess, all 8 years. I started in one direction. I tried to train the leadership team to think like me, an entrepreneurial owner. That was a mistake. I didn't need entrepreneurs. I needed leaders. And so I retooled and developed a leadership program. This one worked. And I think it worked for a variety of reasons. One, we started with looking at our people individually and saying, you want to be a leader. You really probably are not ready to be a leader. What's holding you back? Was it that you were not raised around leadership in your home? Was it that you were taught along the way that you couldn't be more than you are? I typically have managed tradespeople, and tradespeople tend to cut the education off at high school, so they probably haven't been exposed to, formalized leadership training. And once we started talking to the people and saying, or identifying what was holding them back, then I was able to attack each person's limitations. Another benefit of being in a small company, because we were only dealing with 8 people in the program. And you can develop a close relationship with just 8 people. Once we identified what was holding them back, we began working on removing the ceiling and raising their performance. Out of the 8 people, it worked for 6 of them. It did not work for 2 of them. And so now we have 6 people who are, running the company instead of the 8 that we started. But I think, I'll take a 75% success rate on a training program. I bet you would too.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, and it speaks to another issue of this that I think that keeps people from doing this is the criteria most people use is who's been here longest, and that's the next group of leaders. I think you've hit on something else, and my question is, what do you look for, and how do you identify these people that you think you really need to invest in?
Well, I think it's best illustrated by a sports analogy. If you look at any locker room around the country, there are the stars, but the stars are not necessarily the leaders. And so you look for the people that your teammates look up to, or that the people you're coaching look up to. Those are the natural leaders, and they have the greatest chance to become skilled leaders. And so that's the first thing. When you talk to them, most of them have a desire to move forward with leadership. Some of them do not. And if they don't want to move forward, that's okay with me. Then we know what we have. But that natural selection process really works in leadership. And it's rare that you would have an organization where there's not an unofficial pecking order in the company that you have to be attuned to. So that's what I look for first.
Yeah, how do you get past that pecking order? Because a lot of the senior people will look at that and think, why are you being selected when I've been here longer?
Well, we have a very direct communication with everyone in the company, another benefit of small business. So I pride myself on having a different relationship with everyone in my life, family, friends, and business associates. it- when you can go deeper in a relationship and really get to know the people you work with, you can have direct conversations that are not hurtful. I mean, there are those people who are offended, but I find that if I'm transparent and I'm direct and I do what I say I'm going to do, then they come to expect the truth from me, even when it's a little bit painful. And I won't say, you didn't get chosen and you're not ever going to be chosen. I'll say, this is why this decision was made. Here's what I see in you, and here's what I'd like to see in you. And if you're willing to go down that path, we'll pour whatever resources we can into your development. Well, that removes most of the hurt when you do that. Now you have to follow through and do it. You can't just talk about it.
Yeah, and actually you address this communication issue. That's the very first theme you tackle in your book, and you go into a lot of detail about how you did this. What other unique challenges arise when you're trying to develop these leaders from within?
Well, I think that I would say fear is the number one killer of leadership. And a fearful leader not only does not make good decisions, sometimes doesn't make any decisions, but he loses the room. He loses the people who are working underneath him because they know he or she is not going to pull the trigger on important decisions. So fear number one, emotion number two. Uh, we can't help but liking some people more than we like others in an organization. That's just life. But you can't make your decisions starting from a position of emotion. I like to anticipate the impact of decisions that I make and how they're going to affect people emotionally, but I don't make decisions emotionally, and I certainly don't start analyzing a problem from a position of emotion. I would say those are the two principal obstacles that we run into early in a manager's career.
Yeah, and you talk a little bit about this this idea of being able to pull the trigger on decisions and recognizing when people don't. I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about this difference, the proactive versus the reactive leaders.
Well, the principal difference is that a reactive leader, and there are unfortunately a lot of them out there, kind of waits for things to happen and becomes frustrated by the fact that the world is basically piling on. It never seems to go right for that person. And they're right. It doesn't go right because even if you make bad decisions, you can recover from a bad decision. The people who are following you, regardless of what your business is or in the military or whatever, they want to know that you're capable of making a decision. They also want to know that when the decision is incorrect, you can identify, be transparent, and say, this is where I screwed up. Here's what we're going to do now. I think we have a better chance of succeeding based on the failure that we just experienced. Transparency goes a long way. Reactive managers rarely are transparent. They're too busy looking for people to blame.
Oh my goodness, that's a heavy subject. I don't know. We could go off for a long time on that. One of the topics that I wanted to dig into briefly was one of your themes in the book is innovation. I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about climbing a tree.
Yeah, I'm going to go backwards before I explain what that means in the book. So the foundation for innovation is learning stuff. When I was at Trammell Crow, my very first boss was a 23-year-old Harvard MBA with an undergraduate degree from MIT, and he was really, really smart. Well, he recognized that I might be smart, but I didn't know anything about business. And he pulled me aside and he said, I want you to start reading 5 business periodicals every day or every week, and I want you to read the Wall Street Journal every day. And he said, that is going to make up the gap for you very quickly. Well, I was 24 years old at the time, and I'm so fortunate that I was given that advice because I really was not much of a reader before that. Um, I continue that 52 years later. I continue that, and I read about an hour and a half every day, listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, and on a variety of subjects. And it has made me, I'm not sure that it's made me smarter, but it has increased my breadth of knowledge considerably. As a leader, you want to be able to influence people. And the more you know about people, the more you know about the world, the more influential you are. So the book Climbing a Tree, I mean, the chapter, Sometimes You Got to Climb a Tree, it recounts a story that I don't know where I heard, but some people were stranded on a desert island. They fought. They worked at getting off the island. They foraged for food, and what they didn't do was go up and get a bird's eye view of where they were, because it turned out that they were on a deserted beach on a very inhabited island. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but it did. And it's a good analogy for businesses who never climb a tree and look around. And I tell the story in that same chapter that we had an opportunity, our warehouse manager and a couple of people had an opportunity to tour a local Amazon warehouse. And, what better education than going through an Amazon warehouse to learn how to run your own warehouse? And they came back, with big eyes, and they were so excitedly talking about things. But if they hadn't, they were reluctant to go on it, frankly. If they hadn't climbed that tree and gone to that Amazon warehouse, we wouldn't be as good a company today as we are. So the reason I started with the knowledge is the reading gives you questions, and then you go out and climb a tree and find the answers to your questions.
Yeah, that's a great chapter. I love the way these concepts flow together too, because it's not one theme they all stand alone. They all tie together. This idea of innovation then leads into the last theme that you address in your book is on personal growth. How would you characterize the way you've evolved as a leader as you've gone through these processes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was raised by a very smart, hardworking father who gave me a whole bunch of traits that still serve me well today. But an authoritarian leader. I think, like you normally do, you kind of look up to your dad, you copy what he does, and he was successful. And so I went into my business career being an authoritarian leader. I found in my early 40s that was something was not working for me as well as it was working for my friends. And I began to look around and watch how people handled situations, some identical to the situations that I was failing at. And I learned from them that I needed to change my style. And then one of the big mentors in my life, not because she intended to be, but just because she's so good at relationships, is my wife. And I spent 20 years trying to get her to be more like me. And then I finally realized that I was the one who needed to make the changes. And she's so good at relationships that I could learn a lot from her, and I have. And it's been very beneficial. So I became much more relational 20 years ago, and continue that now. And that's what has led to most of the information in the book, frankly, because you've read it. It all starts with the relationships. And I just wasn't very good at relationships 20 years ago.
Yeah, I always look at learning as you're either going to learn from somebody else or you're going to learn it the hard way yourself. And unfortunately, the balance for me has been leaning more towards I was too stubborn and had to learn it the hard way. What have you found as you were going through your leadership growth journey?
I've found that information is everywhere. And I have a 14-year-old grandson who's a baseball player. And so I go to a lot of his games. When I'm watching a game, the people around me have no idea, but I'm observing life, and I'm watching the interaction of the umpires and the players, and I'm learning from the coaches and their interaction with various people. There's just observations to learn from every day, everywhere. And I just think you have to be open to it. And once you get past the stubbornness, learning is really fun. And learning at this age is every bit as fun as it has ever been.
Yeah, I sometimes wish I had this passion for learning when I was actually in school because I think I
Likewise.
could have learned a lot more. But that's one of the lessons you learn as you go forward. Um, You mentioned about all the availability of information, and there's so much of it, books and podcasts and articles and videos, and it's amazing. But there is one thing that I don't find a lot of, and that is leadership development that's targeted around small businesses, and specifically
You're
for that
talking my
thing.
language now.
Well, and I wanted to, I mean, what sparked that? Is this just from your own realization, or what really sparked this book?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I started out going to the internet like anybody else would and try to supplement my own knowledge, and found that there's very little, a lot of high level leadership books out there, but not much directed at small business, like you said. In the course of the leadership training, I knew there was something missing, and I didn't know what it was. And I decided to experiment by writing a blog every 2 weeks to the people on the team. And I wrote it about a variety of subjects and just something that was current that we were going through at the time. I did that for 2 years. And when I started the blog, it didn't immediately take off. They liked it, but then they just kind of filed it away. But the general manager suggested that we have them read the blog together in leadership meetings. And once they started doing that, then they began to converse about it, and they began to use the blogs as a reference point for them. I was walking through the company one day, noticed white binders on several of the desks, and I said, "What's in the white binder?" And they said, "Well, we're printing out your blogs, and we're keeping them on the desk so we can refer to them." And I thought, well, that's a nice compliment. I like that. So after 2 years, I had shared about all the information I could share. I realized I was starting to repeat myself. So I said, "Okay, you're on your own. I'm still here, but I'm going to back off a little bit. I'm going to quit writing the blogs." And then one weekend, I read through all 52 blogs at home, and I said, I really like this. And so I reorganized them. I consolidated them. I went from 52 blogs to 35 in the book, and published them last May. And they're a desktop reference. They are something that has benefited our company. I kind of did it as a legacy project, but then my entrepreneurial nature took over, and I thought, this is information I'd love to share. I've got time in retirement to share it, so that's what I'm doing now. But I was an accidental author. I'm not sure that I have the patience to sit down and write a book start to finish, but because I wrote the blogs, the book basically was already written.
Yeah, I actually wonder if that may have worked to your advantage when you say you're an accidental author. Um, when I sat down to read the book, I actually read it in one sitting, which is very unusual for me. I don't read books like that, but it was so easy to read and so full of great things that I couldn't put it down. So um, I wonder, maybe you could talk a little bit about what, now that you've retired. I'm in that boat too. I retired, but I haven't slowed down at all. But what are you doing these days? Are you taking this message out to people, making it available?
I am, when given the opportunity. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and with the hope that that will lead to speaking opportunities. I've done some speaking. I haven't done as much as I hope to. I think that's my wheelhouse, and so I just love sharing this message, and I love working with wannabe leaders, young leaders, because they're all passionate about getting ahead. And I think, like you've said a couple of times, the information contained in the book is so digestible and so relatable that I don't think most people know this kind of information is available. I was listening to a very famous leadership book the other day while I was taking a walk, and I thought, this is wonderful information, but my people would never listen to this book. And in contrasting that, there wasn't anything wrong with the book, but it's for bigger businesses. This book is so targeted to the small business owner, the early stage leader. Even I've been told that CEOs, experienced CEOs, read the book and go, I'm not sure that I learned anything new, but I was reminded of a lot of things that I'm no longer doing that I should be doing. So it has a broad appeal. I just need to get it in front of the right folks.
Yeah, and one of the things that I keep harping on is that learning and training in and of itself, reading in and of itself, it's not enough. You need to be able to apply it, and a lot of times you need a coach or somebody to help you. Is that something that you're looking at doing or are doing?
The coaching market is so saturated that I think that doing one-on-one coaching does not terribly appeal to me. Going and presenting the training course on site does appeal to me, and work with groups of 10 or smaller. I think that's probably where I will wind up. I don't see myself as being a coach, you know, just because I'm active and I know a lot of people. I'm a mentor. I get requests for that. I like doing that, but that's different than an ongoing coaching relationship. And for some reason, I don't think that fits me as well.
Right. Yeah, I guess I use the term kind of generically and widespread because I look at all of that mentoring and post training, even group sessions is all part of coaching people. And so when I was looking through your website, it looked like you were doing some of that type of work through trainings and whatnot to try to help people understand how to apply what they're reading. Even though it's very straightforward, there's not a lot of mystery in what you've written. I don't think people would have a hard time understanding it. But sometimes actually learning how to apply the specific lessons can be the challenge. And that's the part that I always felt people missed. So,
Well, I agree with you. And given that opportunity, if I can present the book or the course before people really start trying to apply it, there's no question that it would be more effective. But I do agree with you that the concepts are so simple that they can be applied.
absolutely. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you about this because this is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I think you've hit an approach that I've not seen, which is why I think it's important to get the message out about what you're doing and point people towards your book. Um, how can people find out more about this?
Well, the website for the book and the training course, and for me speaking, is growingyourown.net. I love to hear from people directly. If you want to email me, you can reach me at rich@growingyourown.net.
Okay, and I'm going to have all of that in the show notes so that people can they don't have to go back and rewind this. That goes back. That's legacy. People don't rewind anymore, do they? Well, as I said, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to getting to see more of what you're doing and following you. And I would encourage people to go out to the website and like and follow stuff and buy the book. My goodness, it's a great book. It's not difficult to read, and you'll gain a lot from it. So, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with as we close this episode, Rich?
Well, I didn't mention LinkedIn. I'm not very active on social media, but I do LinkedIn. So if you'd like to follow me, I'd love to be followed. But I've really enjoyed the conversation, Tom. You're a good host, and you brought out the best in me, and I appreciate your endorsement of the book. I really do. So I think you and I are on the same page.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed having you as a guest today, Rich. One of the themes that really stood out to me in this conversation is that leadership development isn't about programs or titles. It's really about people. Rich reminded us that small businesses don't fail at leadership because they don't care. They fail because they're busy surviving. And yet when leaders slow down long enough to invest intentionally in the right people, the payoff is extraordinary. If you're a business owner or leader who wants to stop reacting and start building something that lasts, I would encourage you to check out Rich's work using the links in the show notes and reflect on one simple question. Who are you intentionally growing right now? Because leadership doesn't scale by accident, it grows by design. Thank you for joining us today. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and remember to lead with intention.